Right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martyn Sadler. How you going, mate? And we've got a guest with us today.
We certainly have, and it's one of our favourite guests who always gives absolutely terrific value for money, you might say, although we don't pay him, in fact. So he's, he's bound to give value. But no, he's a great guest. John Kear, the current coach of Batley Bulldogs, who took that role since last appearing on this podcast. And we're going to hopefully talk quite a bit today about the Championship as well as Super League and, you know, all the sort of news around the game and the international game. And so it's a lot to talk about. John, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you as always. And I was just reading, obviously, James Ford is going to be taking over from you. So you're coming into your last few games as a head coach. Will we see you coaching again after this year, or is this going to be your absolute coaching swan song?
I doubt very much if I'll coach after this year, Martyn. It was basically a favour to a club that I've got great affection for at Batley, and an owner, Kevin Nicholas, who I really like. And when they asked me to help them out when Mark Moxon resigned, I agreed. But it was always just until the end of the season and until they could draw breath and find themselves a new coach to take them forward. And they've done that with James Ford.
You think James will do a great job?
I do, yes, I do. I think, it was very much on the rise. He did an absolute fantastic job at York.
He did.
And obviously, the Featherstone scenario didn't suit him. And he left there pretty early on in the season, and he's now got a chance to rebuild his career, basically, whilst assisting what I feel is a great little community club.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a lot to talk about with the Championship, not least the proposal to merge the Championship and League One into one competition next year, which I think is probably going to go ahead. Can I just get your views on that, John? Because obviously, as somebody coaching at that level, what do you think of that proposal, and how do you think it will go, and how would you create fixtures? You know, there's some discussion about how a fixture list might be created for a 21 club competition, because obviously not every club would be able to play every other club home and away.
Well, it's surprising that they don't want everybody to play everybody else, because they normally pile games onto you, don't they?
But, yeah.
I'm glad that they're not, and I think it's a logical solution that all part-time clubs should go into one league. I think basically it's easy enough just to split it into an East and West conference, basically, and that would create more games that were local, so you'd attract better crowds. But obviously there'd have to be some conference games, and then that would make the playoffs as well more meaningful. It's a bit like the Australian system, where they don't play everybody home and away. They play some teams home and away, some teams once, and that's why they have that grand final playoff system.
Yes.
And it just makes sense for us to do a similar thing.
The only problem I can see, mate, is that if you play, if you regionalise, have two regional conferences, you would have some very one-sided scorelines. You know, for example, Bradford or York playing Newcastle wouldn't really be much of a contest, would it? Whereas if you had what I would call a graded fixture list, whereby the top teams, you know, didn't play the ones at the very bottom and vice versa, you'd have fewer really one-sided games. And I always think one-sided games in rugby league are not great spectacles, really, to be perfectly honest.
No, I mean, there was a football game last night, wasn't it? Leeds United and Sheffield Wednesday, and Sheffield had a very understrength team out and managed to draw and then win on penalties simply because they just put 11 people behind the ball. Well, you can't do that in rugby league.
No, you can't. No,
it's absolutely impossible, and you would get that. But for me, there's a responsibility of the clubs to get up to speed. I think for too long, what we've done is cater for the weakest. But what we need to do is cater for the strongest and challenge the others to get up to that. And if they can't get up to that, we might well have to cull them. And I think we have to be as ruthless as that. Because there's got to be a way forward where the game is going to improve in all areas, both on and off the field.
But as a spectacle and as an entertainment, I can see where you're coming from in saying that. But that's not much use if we're going to get 80-0 scorelines, is it?
No.
Really?
Well, as we've seen in Super League this year,
Yeah,
with Salford,
precisely.
it's not a good look for the sport. But I really do believe there's a responsibility. If for example, you alluded to Newcastle, if Newcastle can't hack it, and if they haven't got the funds and resources to hack it, well, perhaps they should fall by the wayside. And I know it sounds very cruel, but sometimes these things have to happen, and we've got to be as strong as our weakest link. I always say this to the teams that I'm coaching, that we're only as strong as our weakest link, so we've all to turn up on point. Well, I
Absolutely.
think the clubs as well are only as strong as the weakest link, and if we lose some, but going by the wayside, so be it. But I just think the governing body's got to be absolutely ruthless to improve standards on and off the field.
Interesting thing about Newcastle, I think they're coached at the moment by an old. I think he would have been an old teammate of yours, Graham Stedman. Did you play with Graham when?
No, Graham was just after me.
Oh, was he just after you? Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot better than me as well. I'll tell you, Matt. He's
Oh well, that's very modest of you, but maybe true.
He was a great player, was Graham Stedman.
Yeah.
And
we'll never forget that Melbourne test when we beat the Aussies.
Correct. I mean, that's one of the things, the iconic images, isn't it, of Ashes series. And that's why we want to see it recreated at the end of this year. So that's a positive of rugby league. But we're talking about potential negatives. And it is coached by Graham, but it's really difficult. And what that team is basically is a student. It's basically an amateur team. Well, that ain't good enough to be in a semi-professional league. No. So if they can't get up to speed, and again, it's very, very harsh, I just feel we should lose them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's an interesting point.
Just before we go any further, fellas, I see there's an article on you in this month's edition of Rugby League World magazine, John Kear. What can you tell us about that, mate? Can you give us a bit of a sneak peek about what that article was about?
No, I don't know. I speak to that many people, Jake. So.
Well, let me see what the people a secret. Let me have a look, because Lorraine, our lovely editor, sent it for us with Sebastian Sternick. I believe that's available this month on www.orl.com/shop, Martin. So we better give that one a plug.
We're sure about that. We're absolutely sure about that. John's wise words, and always worth reading, mate. Always worth reading.
Well, if you've got an opinion, you may as well express it. Not everybody will agree, but just speak honestly, and you can't go far wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. How have you found being back in the coaching circle, John? Have you enjoyed being back around the boys and being involved in the game? Yeah,
Jay. I mean, that's the special thing is being in and around the players, and that's what you create relationships, camaraderie, and you build memories with them, and that's what sport's about, and that's why I love team sports so much. You're not so bothered about the political side of it, but inevitably that comes along with it. But yeah, I have enjoyed my interaction with the players. They've been a really good set of lads, and there's a lad like Luke Blake, who I gave his Super League debut to at Wakefield. I think it was 2009, and he's going to retire this season and play his last game this coming weekend. So that's a lovely little story that comes around. So it's just great to interact with players, and they really are the lifeblood of this sport. And the majority of players are totally honest, hardworking, grounded people, and I think that reflects the sports.
And the thing is, John, being involved with them keeps you, young at heart as well, doesn't it? And mentally, of course, as well.
It does.
I mean, as we grow older, it's easy to sort of sit back and just, play golf or just have up for an easy life. Well, you've not done that really, have you? I mean,
there's nothing wrong with golf, Martin.
Yeah, who knows?
There's nothing wrong with golf, I'll tell you that. So that's the first one. But yeah, you can just settle into a comfort zone and not challenge yourself. But I think you should challenge yourself. And, I'm fortunate enough to have a role at Wakefield on the corporate side. So you're involved in a club in that way. And it's just great. You've got to keep yourself busy. You've got to keep yourself positive, and you've got to feel that you can make a contribution. And if you do that, you feel your life's worthwhile, and you keep batting on and enjoying it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You've been in the game for a while now, John. Have you noticed a change at all? Like when going back into coaching, have the players changed much since, like, back in the day when you first sort of started out? I know we got like social media and TikTok
Yeah.
dances and things like that happening, mate. But how much have the players changed?
Yeah, they're bound to change. I mean, the players reflect society, don't they? It's just like the government does, social media does, etc., etc. And obviously there's a lot more awareness with things like sports science. So you've got to look after players with regard to the load that you give them and so on and so forth. Because when I played and when I was first involved in coaching, it was well jump, and the players used to say how high. Well, now you've got to explain why you need them to jump. So there is a bit of a difference there. So it's an interesting dynamic. But ultimately, the young men who enjoy playing a great gladiatorial sport, and that will appeal to anybody throughout time.
Yeah, absolutely. And mate, now it's the top four in the championship in the moment. They all seem to be pushing pretty hard. Obviously, it
Yeah.
looks like we could have two, maybe three teams promoted into Super League potentially as early as next season. Uh, who do you think is probably best placed club-wise to make that move up? I guess who would you like to see go up to Super League?
Right, that's a great question, that, Jake. So I'm going to upset somebody, aren't I? So anyway, here's to it. So I certainly think York should, and I still believe the major factor should be on-field performance. And obviously York have been sensational. They've stuck together a run of victories. They've won the 1895 Cup. They're a club very much on the up. They seem very stable financially. They're ticking all the boxes. The only thing that I would put against York is that they haven't got an established academy to bring the young players through. So that might be one of the conditions you put on them for entry. I think Bradford should, because Bradford's support base is unbelievable. I can tell you that from when I spent my time there. We had a Challenge Cup game against Leeds Rhinos, and we were in the Championship. Leeds were in Super League, and there was over 10,000 people there. And it was an absolutely great atmosphere. It was one of the great recent Challenge Cup ties of our time, and we managed to turn Leeds over. So
You did,
it was just a great day.
One of your famous victories, mate. One of your famous victories.
Yeah. And there's potential for that with that support base. What Bradford, I think, have got to do is they'd have to can off the stock car racing and make their pitch 100 metres by 68, because at the minute it's like playing on a postage stamp. So there's something for them to improve. And I also think Toulouse, they would be a good addition as well to create a French derby. And I know people say they don't bring many supporters over here, but I don't think that's a big issue. I think it adds to the spectators that we would take over their experience. So they'd be the three, but that would obviously upset Oldham, because I think Oldham are making great strides. But it might be a year or 2 years too early for them, because they really have run into the Championship, and they've challenged everybody within the Championship.
And Bill Quinn's a very ambitious owner, isn't he?
Yes.
And he's also got a couple of quid behind him as well.
He certainly has, and they're the type of people we need to attract, Martin, and keep within the game. So they've got a good case as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. But
and somebody was saying, go on, John.
One thing I would say, Martin and Jake, is that I think Salford shouldn't be in Super League, because I honestly think it's been an absolute debacle, and it's made the sport at elite level look an absolute joke at times.
Which is particularly unfortunate, isn't it? Because Super League's had a great year apart from Salford. The big crowds, big TV audiences, very competitive games, apart from when Salford have been playing. And that's a tragedy, really, isn't it?
It is. And I feel, the people I feel for most at Salford are the players, the coaches, and the fans. Because they really have been, they've been promised things and it hasn't been delivered. But we just can't have 70-odd nil and 88-6 scorelines in elite sport.
No.
It's just too non-competitive, and elite sport should be competitive.
Well, the fans in particular, I mean, there's been a significant group of Salford fans who have followed them
Yeah.
everywhere. And I notice, they lost 38-6 at Lee on Friday night, which was a much better result than expected for them, actually, to be honest, when they'd got so many debutants, so many lone players. And even the Lee players, apparently, at the end of the game, went over to the Salford fans and applauded them because they'd given unstinting support to Salford throughout the game, even when Lee pulled ahead, in the final 20 minutes, and fans, you can't, you've got to respect fans, haven't you, really?
Yeah, you have, and
you give that sort of support.
And I think that's part of the family of rugby league. Everybody in the game knows how much they've suffered. And it really is a travesty that these people have spent the money and they've been so loyal to a club, and that hasn't been reciprocated in how the club's treated them. It really hasn't. So it's a travesty for them. But again, there's got to be standards set, Martin, and obviously the financial setup at Salford just ain't good enough, because everybody who's within the game, we know the players there, and their big priority is paying the mortgage, just like everybody, paying the mortgage and have enough money to put food on the table for the kids, etc. And it ain't been provided. So it's just wrong. It is absolutely wrong. They've been treated terribly there, of players, fans, coaches.
And it's a crucial day for them tomorrow, because it's the last Thursday in the month, which is supposedly the day when they're all supposed to get paid.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see whether they do get paid tomorrow or not. Obviously, we all hope they do. But if they don't, goodness knows what's going to happen. And they've also got the court hearing on the 3rd of September, which is a week away, a week today, in fact, into the winding up order brought by the HMRC. So, it's looking decidedly grim.
It is.
For them,
unfortunately. It's very unfortunate, and how Paul Rowley and his coaching staff have managed to put a side out every week except one. I think they deserve a medal for that, because
they do.
They've just been ringing around clubs trying to get players to fulfil fixtures. But again, Martin, and I know it's very harsh, but that's not what an elite club's about. An elite club is about being competitive and about challenging the real quality that we've got within our competition. And Salford had done that. They'd done that previously, but this year it's just fallen apart completely.
Talking about elite clubs, John, looking at Super League, we'll look back. We'll come back to the Championship in shortly, but looking at Super League, who's your best bet now to win the grand final? Because there's been some really interesting results, haven't there? Hull KR winning at Wigan, but then going to Leeds, and Leeds, I thought Leeds gave their best performance since they beat Lee last year. Do you remember when they played the game after Rob Burrow died? And it was incredibly emotional, and Leeds played like demons against Lee last year. And it was almost like that in the first half, in particular, against Hull KR. And it was probably no coincidence. I actually wrote in my column this week that the Burrow family were there again, because they've been nominated for this TV documentary, for that Rob Burrow documentary that's up for a TV award in September. And I don't know whether I'm sort of overthinking this, but their presence almost seemed to motivate the Leeds players to put on a great show. Did you think that?
I think obviously it's an added emotional attachment that they've got there, but I just think that Leeds' performance reflects the gradual improvement that there's demonstrated throughout the year. I think Brad Arthur's done an absolutely sensational job. I think the players have bought into what he's trying to do. I think they've got their style of play and they're comfortable with that style of play. And my word, it's a challenging style of play. And, we can all accept Hull KR have been the best team in Super League because they're the top of the league. But the 3 games they've played against Leeds, they were lucky to win one and they've been beaten twice. So there's a little challenge for the Robins, to towards the end of the season, because they'll certainly be challenged by the Rhinos.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think both of those can beat Wigan if it comes to a grand final? Or even Saints? I mean, Saints
Yes,
have been showing a lot of improvement as well.
they have. Saints have. They seem to have refound the mojo, don't they? And
Mm,
I think that came about in part because Moses Mbai went into the halves, and I think
mm,
his kicking game has made such a big difference to them. But they're struggling a little bit at the minute out because they've lost both wingers. So it looks like
mm.
Sadler will have to go out onto the wing, and Wellesby at fullback, and Mbai and Lomax in the halves. But I think they found their mojo, so they will challenge. Wigan are Wigan, aren't they? We know they have a Wigan wobble at a certain time of year, but we also know that they finish very strongly, and they will do. So I think it's the most wide open that we've had for many, many years, because you can't write Lee off either. They've beaten some of the top teams, and you get a whole lot of
Lee made
Wakefield
one
in
not
there.
long ago, didn't they?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Lee beat several top teams, all
Yeah.
their top rivals, but they
Yeah.
seem to have hit a peak and then fallen away from it a bit.
And that's the difficulty. That's the difficulty. You know, Hull Kingston Rovers have been so consistently good, but you feel they're wobbling just a tad at the minute.
Yes.
And, you know, Wigan have had their wobble that looks like they're coming back. Saints didn't have that great a start, but they've now re-established themselves. So
Mm.
it's absolutely fascinating. And it's who gets the run right. And obviously, once you're in finals rugby league, it's knockout rugby league, which is the real essence of the game that I love. So it'll be absolutely fascinating to see what I think will be the best playoff series we've had yet in Super League.
I think so. And Wakefield or Hull, who'll get that sixth spot? Do you think?
Wakefield.
You think so?
Yeah, no,
Despite
I
that
think
obviously disappointing result at Wigan.
they've had two disappointing results: St Helens at home and away at Wigan. But they both come after having a week off. You know, one
Week
was
off didn't do you much good, does it?
no, it didn't. No. One was one that was designed for everyone. Was a split round, wasn't it? And one
Yeah.
was obviously when Salford couldn't get a team. So that forced week off, it didn't do them any good. They need to be playing week in, week out. But they've had a wobble. But Darryl Powell's a very clever man, and I think they'll get back on the horse. And I think the fixture list does favour Wakefield over Hull FC.
Well, Hull have got a trip to Hull KR, haven't they, to
Yeah,
come? So that that won't be an
it'll
easy
be
game for them.
spicy. It
Yeah,
will be spicy.
absolutely.
It'll be sold out and spicy. And again, that's what we want, isn't it? We
Yeah.
want that. We want games where it means a lot to players, to fans, and obviously to you guys in the media who can then publicise it.
Don't you regret going back to Australia, Jake, when we're talking about what's happening over here?
Mate, absolutely. I was going to just touch on though with Wigan, Martin. You and I came under a little bit of flack in the comments section of our podcast last week. Apparently, we were giving too much leeway to Wigan for that loss against Hull KR. We kept bringing up the injuries to Bevan, French, and Junior Nsemba as the reason why Wigan lost. Now we saw them return over the weekend, and I've got to say they both had absolute blinders against Wakefield. You know, doesn't look like they're underdone at all. It looks like they're going to have a fresh Junior Nsemba and Bevan French. And I think you and I were almost validated on the weekend that their inclusion is so integral to Wigan's success.
Anybody who doesn't think those two players make a big difference, frankly, I think a bit foolish.
I agree. I believe there's a stat going around that Wigan are 20% more likely to win if Bevan French is playing, which is a heck
Only
of
20%.
that shows. But
Yeah.
it shows what a massive effect he has on that team. And you know, he's a great player, and he's one that everybody likes watching. And it's just like they had their wobble when French and Field were missing last year. They've had the wobble when French is missing this year. But if he's back and if he's fully fit, they need watching. Believe you me.
And the thing about a player like Bevan French, it's not just that you've got to watch him very carefully. It's just that also that by doing that, you sometimes take attention away from other players who are then given the freedom to, play and score tries against you that, without French being there might not be the case. So it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it, that he brings to their side.
Very much so, and you're right with that, Martin. But we've also got to acknowledge that the grand final last year, it was trialless except for Bevan's Prench's piece of brilliance.
Yeah.
And that's what he can do. He can win a game. If Wigan are looking, it's a 2-2 game or a 4-2 game, who can we look to produce that bit of magic to bring us home? And it tends to be that guy with number 6 on his back. So it's very, very important to the Wigan Warriors. And it is great to watch. I mean, I want to see him playing in finals because you want that element of magic and maverick play that just provides the point of difference.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Just wanted to ask you as well, John, what have you made of Warrington this year? Obviously, they had that disappointing loss over the weekend against Huddersfield. Do you feel like they've disappointed this year?
Yeah, I do. And I think the guy at the top, I think Sam Burgess will feel that as well. He's got very high standards. He's a massive competitor. But I think that Challenge Cup loss, I think it absolutely wiped the wind out of the sails as a group of players because, let's be honest, on the day, they were the better team. But they had it pinched from them at the death. And I don't know whether they've actually recovered from that.
No.
It's the longest hangover, I think, in sport. But I just feel it absolutely wiped that group of players out. And I think they've been struggling ever since. And, they've had some good wins, but they've had some really poor performances as well. And that element of inconsistency, I feel, comes on the back of that.
It's funny, isn't it? Because they went to Huddersfield at the weekend for a game that they really needed to win. They already were outsiders for getting into the top 6. But they could only sustain that challenge by winning that game. And it's a game that they should have won on any normal criteria. You'd say they had the better squad. They should have been in better form, but they lost it, and they lost it after having been ahead. So that's a bit depressing for them. And I noticed this morning as we talk that they've announced that one of their players, Connor Wrench, has announced his immediate retirement from the game. And without, I mean, he's only 26, I think, is Connor Wrench.
23, I think, Martin.
He's 23, and
he is, yes.
And in my opinion, a very, very good player, a player who's always shown tremendous promise. Had some really bad luck with injuries, unfortunately, but you wonder. There's no explanation of why he's decided to retire, except they've said he wants to pursue opportunities elsewhere, not in rugby league.
Yeah.
But it's always a bad sign when players, start. I think when players, start quitting a club in that sort of way, and it may be a completely innocent, plausible explanation that we just don't know the details of yet.
Yeah, I think he's had 2 knee reconstructions, hasn't he? And 23-year-old and having undergone 2 knee reconstructions, it takes some getting over. And I think we've just got to respect his decision in that, he's got a long life, hasn't he, after playing rugby league?
Very much so, yeah.
If your knees are a ghost after that, it is a long time. He needs to live a normal life as best he possibly can within that. So I just think, I don't think we can read anything into it except a kid's just got sick of being injured and he wants to live his life.
Absolutely, and of course, rugby league is a pretty merciless game in that respect, isn't it? It does sometimes inflict injuries that must be really hard to cope with for some players, particularly knee problems, ACLs,
knees, hips, ankles. Yeah. If you go to a past and present players reunion, you'll see all the old guys. They're hobbling about, and it's the knee that's gone, or it's their ankle that's gone, or they've had a replacement hip, and it's a pretty brutal sport, but it's a sport that we love.
You tell a rugby league player when he goes through the security gate at an airport.
Yes, it goes off. Yeah.
That's right. That's unfortunate, but true, sadly. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, speaking of, there was a pretty interesting sit-down interview with Gary Schofield on Fox League televised last night here in Australia. He did one of those face-to-face episodes and sort of looked back at his career. So I advise any of our listeners or viewers, if they want to go and watch Scully, tell him the truth as he always does and and speaking his mind. Definitely go and listen to that one.
Yeah.
Can we take a look at the playoff picture for the championship going forward? We're just looking at the fixtures for this weekend. Toulouse are playing York. That's set to be a pretty exciting matchup.
No, that was last weekend. So
Or
you're
was that
looking
last
at
weekend?
Yeah,
yes,
York beat them
yeah,
16-8, I think they won York. So,
yeah. No,
so
the
we can
interesting
predict that one accurately, Jake. I'll go for
yes,
York by 8.
the interesting thing about the championship is that it's a 6-game playoff, but with very few games still to play. Most teams have still got 3 games to play. There are 9 teams in the running for 6 places, which makes it sadly, unfortunately, Batley not one of them, John, which
No.
is a great shame. But 9 teams, as I say, still in the running, and what that means is you get some great games in prospect, don't you? With those teams playing against each other in fixtures that are very meaningful. For example, this weekend, Bradford play Toulouse. It's Bradford playing Toulouse, not York, Jake. And you've got Barrow playing Halifax, which is another very meaningful game. Oldham versus Doncaster. They're all 4-pointers, to be perfectly honest. And I think, John, from what you've said so far, I think your tip would be for York to win the whole competition, would it?
Yes, it would.
To win the grand final, you think?
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Applegarth, after that disappointing year at Wakefield, has done a fantastic job at York, hasn't he, really?
He has, Martyn, but, even during that disappointing year, Martyn, I thought he carried himself with great dignity.
He did.
And showed great respect for the club and for his players who were under his tutelage. So I thought he showed many positive signs then, and he's now gone to a club, and they're just playing great. They're just playing some great rugby league, and I do believe they're the best team within the championship. And unfortunately for Batley, we've got them on the last day of the season, so if they're playing for the top spot, we'll have our work cut out. But no, that they're a really good team, and they're my tip for the top. Yes.
Well, the 4 points clear at the moment, John. So they might not need need those points. When they might be able to rest a few players. Do a Penrith. What Penrith have done this weekend. We'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, so obviously the thing I liked about Mark Applegarth, you're absolutely right. When he was at Wakefield, he never threw his dummy out of the pram, and when he left the club at the end of that season, obviously to be replaced by Darrell, he never said anything critical about the club. He never moaned about it. And I mean, to be honest, he'd been operating with a very, very limited salary cap at Wakefield that year, with a very limited squad. So there were quite a lot of reasons why they didn't do better than they did. But he just behaved with dignity the whole way through. I think
he did. And I thought it was a great credit to him, Martyn, and that's what leaders do. Leaders lead in the correct manner, and he did that at Wakefield, and he's certainly doing that now at York, where he's got some very good troops at his disposal who are playing some really good rugby league.
Do you think that York can generate enough support to be a genuine Super League club, John?
Well, that's their challenge, isn't it? It's a new area, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about expansion. You're virtually expanding into North Yorkshire if you get York in there.
Yes, yeah.
So, and I've banged on about this before, Jake and Martyn, on this show, where coaches get sacked if they don't produce the result. Well, commercial men, if you don't produce the result and fill the stadiums, get on your bike and bring somebody else in. So let's have a look at what they can do.
I see what's quite interesting. I was just watching a little bit of the Women's Rugby Union World Cup at the weekend, and they were playing a game at York. I can't remember now which of the two teams were playing there. I think it might have been, was it South Africa playing there or somebody? But, they seem to have a pretty full stadium for an extraordinarily one-sided women's rugby union game with, frankly, a lot of female players who didn't really look up to all that much, if I'm honest about it. And it's funny how, the other code are able to create these events and persuade people to part with their money in quite big numbers to come and see them. Whereas, I can guarantee that if those same people had gone to see a York rugby league game, they'd have probably seen far more athletic, far more skill, and far more excitement than they saw watching a very one-sided women's rugby union game. But
And even with the York ladies team, York Valkyrie, I mean,
absolutely, yeah,
they've been at the top of the division,
and they
for
beat
a
Wigan at the
number of
weekend.
years, and they bet Wigan, yeah. So let's sing their praise as well. But I honestly believe that's down to the commercial men and the marketing men. That's their job. Mark Applegarth's done his job. The players have done their job. Their job now is to raise their profile and give people a reason to go along to York and watch. Because once they get there 2 or 3 times, they'll become fans. Because our
Yes,
sport's such a great sport. But
yeah,
they must be charged. It's their responsibility to get them there in the first place. And I don't care what narrative they use, just get them there.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I live in North Yorkshire, mate, and there's very little evidence of rugby league in North Yorkshire, if we're really honest about it, John. It's a bit of a desert for our sport in some respects, and that's something that I think needs to change, really, and
Very much so.
as it does everywhere.
Yeah, it does. But, we can try to expand through amateur clubs as well, and use them as a way into the York Knights setup. So there's all sorts of opportunities for people, but they've just got to seize upon them. But I do think it's a new area, and just because it's nice rural North Yorkshire, I don't mean to say they can't appreciate a great sport.
Not
Well,
at
they
all,
can.
no. I couldn't agree more. Again, just looking at the table, Bradford are in second place at the moment. Toulouse are in third. Which of those, if York are in the grand final, who will they be playing in that game? Will it be Bradford? Will it be Toulouse? Or could it even be Oldham or another club? It's quite a
I think a lot depends on this game because obviously finishing the top 2 gives you a fair old advantage. So I think it's a massive game this week between Bradford and Toulouse, and I think people should go along there and have a really good look at it, and they'll see a very good standard of rugby league. But I think it will be Bradford. I think Bradford will beat Toulouse, and they'll finish in second spot.
yeah, Saturday night at 6 o'clock at Odsal. Certainly a game worth being at, isn't it?
It is very much so.
No question. Yeah, long way for
And
you to come from Australia, Jake. But worth it
too
for a
far
couple.
for me, mate. It won't be an overnight trip, that's for sure. But just on Oldham, John, you guys went pretty close with Oldham a few weeks back, didn't you? Was it 22-18?
Yeah, we did, yeah. And the kicked a penalty after the hoot had gone, so it were 20 points. We felt that we lost that game rather than Oldham won it. So, and because of our recent form, it hasn't been very good. I think you forget how to win close games. Well, Oldham closed that one out, and it was on the back of a piece of brilliance by Ryan Brierley. It was just a great individual try that he scored, and it just scuppered our efforts. But that's why you pay the big bucks for quality players, and that's what he produced. But they can be challenged, but they're also a very good team, and they're still strengthening. Ethan Ryan, Ormond Royd, Brierley. They've got some good players there who just
Players with Super League experience. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. So they are a team to watch, Jake. You bang on.
Yeah.
Just ask you another thing about the championship, John. Obviously, London Broncos now owned by Gary Hetherington, but in the bottom 4, actually, they're 4th from bottom. You're 3rd from bottom at the moment. But Gary's apparently very optimistic that they might make a realistic bid to get into Super League next year. What would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, I think that'd be it's a valid claim, isn't it, by Gary? And it doesn't do things by halves. I mean, you've only to look at that Leeds Rhinos club. Absolutely been turned around under Gary and Paul Caddick. When they took over, they were in a pretty dire straits with the Rhinos, and now they're well established as a viable business with an absolute quality team that's improving and possibly going to reinvent themselves to equal what the golden generation provided with all those grand final wins. So he's got a great track record, and you can make a case out for them. But London this year, I think they were in survival mode at the start of the season, and they've now gone into improvement mode. And I can tell you that because I've watched the last 3 games, and they're playing some really good stuff. They're very energised and they're challenging teams, just as they did with Oldham last week. And they are on the up on the playing side, but I think it will be off the playing side that a bigger case can be made for the Broncos to get into Super League. But they just need to have a permanent home, a permanent training base as well, as a non-negotiable for entry.
Well, I believe that they've actually signed a new 10-year agreement for playing at Wimbledon. I mean, it's a perfect venue for them, isn't it, Wimbledon?
It is.
It's well situated. It's a very modern, super, but quite small stadium, shared obviously with Wimbledon Football Club on Plough Lane in Wimbledon. And Gary, we keep hearing that Gary is putting together a team of investors who, at some stage in the hopefully not too distant future, will be revealed to the world. And I'm looking forward to seeing that because, as you sort of implied, Gary never does things by halves, does he? He always goes full in on a project like this. And I can only imagine that when whoever he's got backing him, I suspect that they'll be quite impressive people, and that will then give a massive boost to their bid to get into Super League. Because obviously the crucial thing for the committee chaired by Lord Kane is going to be financial viability.
Correct.
We've seen, the Salford situation has made it absolutely clear that financial viability has to be a main factor. You can't get away from that. So if Gary can demonstrate that he's got people with very, very deep pockets who are investing in the club, then you're halfway there, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a massive plus point, and as you rightly say, Martin, they've got to be able to not just survive but to prosper. I think that's the one. And if they've got the resources and the financial wherewithal to do that, there is a good case to make for bringing them in. But it needs to be, all I would say is it needs to be transparent, that's all. We need to really know the reasons why the clubs who will come up have been admitted. If they say York have been admitted because they've won the comp, great, that'll do for me. But let's have the other reasons as well behind the other people who are allowed in.
In the meantime, though, mate, we've still got the grading system, which could mean that whoever wins the Championship Grand Final this year might not get into Super League. And I don't know about you, but I think that's absolutely bloody ridiculous, really.
It irritates me, that. It absolutely irritates me. And if whoever wins the Grand Final in the Championship, they should have... I mean, you're rewarded with a quarter of a point or something. What? That's nonsense.
Yeah.
You should be massively rewarded for what you've done on the field of play.
Yeah.
And if you've won it, you should be in pole position to go there, so long as you've got other little boxes ticked, i.e. financial viability.
Yes, I mean, I think it's fair to say that there ought to be a financial viability test on any club coming into Super League. If the Salford situation has taught us one thing and one thing only, it's that financial viability has to be the crucial factor, really, more than anything else, because without it, you can't survive, can you?
And don't just believe what they say. Ask for the proof.
Precisely. Yes. Precisely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Might bring these down under for a second here, fellas. Lewis Dodd, I'd like to get your thoughts on him, John. It looks like there are some clubs showing interest in him. It's been known that South don't want him anymore, and we don't really have much of a sample to go off in terms of what his career has looked like in the NRL so far. I saw some reports say that the Raiders and Titans are considering signing him. What advice would you give to him if you were his coach at the moment, mate? He's sort of been left in limbo a little bit at South by the looks.
I think Lewis needs some advice from the people close to him, his family, his agent, etc. And the advice would be, keep your head down and keep working hard and believe. I mean, he showed some great rugby league when he was at Saints. I think he possibly went a couple of years too early. I really do, because it wasn't an established, experienced pivot. And to be a pivotal player down under, my word, you've got to be a very, very high standard indeed. I think it's easier for a three-quarter or a middle unit player to go there, as we've seen with numerous players. But I think if you're going to run a team, which is obviously what you do when you've got number 6 or 7 on your back, you've got to have that extra experience. And I just think he went a couple of years too soon. But I think he's got to show resolve, and he's got to show belief in his own ability to come through the other side. And if it means taking a step back, if coming back to Super League would be a step back, then do that and rebuild from there. Because it's very rare that people's careers in rugby league, football, or any sport just goes on a smooth upward trajectory all the time. There's bumps in the road for everybody.
And the thing is, he got offered such a great deal to go to South Sydney that it must have been really difficult to turn down. I mean, the money he's earning there dwarfs what he was earning at St Helens, and at the end of the day, money obviously talks. But the funny thing about Lewis was that I watched his game against Brisbane Broncos a few weeks ago when he was actually picked in the starting lineup, and I didn't think he had a bad game at all, actually. I thought his kicking game was very, very strong, and and I don't think he did many things wrong. He actually saved a try right on the line with a great last-ditch tackle. But for some reason, Wayne Bennett just doesn't seem to like him. And sometimes you get that with coaches, that there are certain players that coaches seem to like and trust and so on. And sometimes a player, no matter what his talent, doesn't suit a particular coach. Is that true, John? Do you find
it is true? Yeah, very much.
Players will play well for you, but not for other coaches.
Yeah, and I think Lewis was signed when Wayne Bennett wasn't in post. So he was signed prior to that. So
I think it was Jason Demetria, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, I think you've got to bear that in mind as well. But I think if it doesn't suit Wayne, well, all well and good. Just go somewhere else, Lewis, and prove him wrong, and re-establish yourself as a really good young player. But and again, I accept what you're saying about the money dwarfs what is offered at St Helens, but he was still learning the game at St Helens, and it wasn't the finished article. And that's a brutal competition, is the NRL, where every move that you make is examined to the nth degree.
Yes.
You really are in the spotlight there. And if you do come up short, you get whacked, from the media and from the fans, etc. So it's been a salutary lesson for him. But I think ultimately, in a couple of 3 years, he might look back and think, well, I learned a heck of a lot then, and I'm a better player for it, and I'm a better person for it in the long run.
And you were talking a bit earlier about accountability, John. And it's interesting. I mean, who decided to make that gigantic offer to Lewis at South Sydney? Because whoever it was, it seems as though they made a misjudgment, doesn't it? But whoever it was, are they going to be held accountable for making that mistake?
Yeah, well, there's more and more now, the recruitment managers cropping up. Especially in the NRL, but now it's becoming in vogue in Super League as well.
Absolutely.
And if your job's to recruit, you've got to be held accountable as to whether the recruit's any good or not for your club.
Well, it's interesting. At the club you're involved with now, Wakefield, Steve Mills has just been promoted to Director of Rugby, and his main role has always been recruitment, hasn't it?
Yeah. And what a good job he's done, Martyn.
He's obviously being rewarded for having done a great job.
Yes. Well, he spotted, he went away from the norm, and he went for lower age profiles in overseas players that he brought over. And there were players that I would say the vast majority of Super League fans had never heard of. But Steve had certainly done his recruitment and done his due diligence and brought them over here on affordable contracts. And they've just been proved to be great. I mean, Caius Fartelli, nobody had heard of him. But now he's one of the favourite players in Super League for everybody. Everybody loves to see his rampaging runs. So, Steve's done a great job, and Riley's been rewarded. And I think that'll be the case at other clubs. I think more and more clubs will be appointing recruitment managers.
Well, we had Matt Ellis on the on this podcast a few weeks ago, didn't we, Jake? And he made the comment that he could phone up Steve Mills at 10 o'clock at night, and he'd be watching videos of the Queensland Cup or something, that sort of thing. He absolutely dedicated to that role. And that's what you want, isn't it? People who
And
know what
and
the
Martin, on the other side as well, we've got a lad who's been on dual reg with us, Noah High, a young forward that Wakefield has signed. And I can tell you, Steve Mills trawls through Batley games as well to see
mm,
how Noah's going on. So he's
mm,
so thorough in all that he does. And
mm.
he's been a great recruit. I mean, Darryl Powell's been a sensational recruit, and Michael Shenton and Danny Kearnan, but Steve Mills has as well. And he's been justly and rightly rewarded for his efforts.
Yeah, yeah. You don't think Wakefield have overperformed this year, John? I mean, obviously exceeded expectations, newly promoted into Super League, still battling away for a top six spot. You've said earlier that you think they'll get into the top six. That's a hell of an achievement for a newly promoted club, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think both Lee and Wakefield probably laid down the template how to do it because let's not make any bones about it. Last year, when Wakefield were in the Championship, they had a Super League team in the Championship. And when Lee strolled home in the Championship as well, when Lee got promoted, they had a Super League team in the Championship. So they've got quality there, and all they did was add to that quality, and they had a year's practice for Super League. And I think they've come up, and you could argue they have overachieved, but they're great to watch, Martin, and
Yeah.
they've provided such good entertainment.
And the
And a
atmosphere at
night,
Bellevue is fantastic, isn't it?
well, a night at Bellevue is a magical night. It really is because of the atmosphere and all
Mm,
the theatre that surrounds it as well,
mm,
courtesy of Matt Ellis. And then the team have delivered in the main as well on the field of play.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Another thing I want to touch on, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, but Penrith Panthers are making headlines this week. John, they've decided to rest pretty much their whole lineup for I guess is it their final match of the season, Martin?
I'm not sure if it's the final one.
Because I don't know if they've got the bye in the final. I think Cowboys got the bye in the final round.
Yeah.
But yes, very interesting decision for Ivan to rest his team this close to finals, mate. Would you ever consider doing something like that
Yeah,
as a coach?
by all means. Yeah, if you think you're going to achieve the end goal by doing that, if that's the strategy to do that, you would certainly do it. And I've no issue at all because I've no doubt that the Penrith team that turns out will be competitive and give a good account of themselves. And if he's let his gun players have a week where they can rest, recover, prepare for what's round the corner, i.e. the finals, that's his job. That's his job. If they win the grand final, Jake, nobody will be asking any questions, will they? They'll say, what a masterstroke by Ivan Cleary. So you live or die by your decisions, and he's made what I think is a good decision.
And the thing is about the Penrith squad, you probably find that the players who come in are
Yeah,
only marginally not quite as good as the players who they replace.
very much so.
It's not like, it's not going to be a Salford situation, is it?
No,
Where they're
no.
not putting players in who obviously can't compete at that
And
level.
and some of the players will see it as a great opportunity,
Of course.
to remind Ivan exactly how good they are, and perhaps they should be more in consideration on a regular basis. So I just think it's a win-win situation for the club, and I can fully understand the coach's decision, and I think it's a smart decision.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. And it'll
Well, that's
still be a
it.
great game.
Yep.
Yeah,
No doubt
yeah.
about it.
And that's it. And like they've had 4 pretty long seasons now with all the
Yeah.
finals football that they've had to play. So, you know, they do need that little breather before they head into the postseason. But yeah,
And we'll be seeing a lot
any,
of them, Jake, when they come over for the Ashes, won't we? So that'll be
oh,
great as
mate,
well. We'll see a lot of
we
the
hope so.
Penrith players when they come over with
Yeah,
Australia.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it's going to
yeah.
be a very long season for them. You're
Yes,
absolutely
it
right
is. Yeah,
when you add the international games.
yeah.
Mm. Also, John, I was going to ask you, there's been a little bit said about some of the Australians that are putting their hands up, or the English players in Australia. Billy Smith's the latest one to put up his hand. AJ
Well,
Brimson
Blake
also put up
Brayley
his
now of
hand.
Cronulla, the Blake Brayley, the Cronulla hooker, who is actually a bloody good player, a very good player indeed, actually. He's now said that he would be interested in playing for England. His mother comes from Liverpool, apparently, and he'd quite like to honour her, honour his mother and his heritage by being considered for England. So we're going to have the potential for a team full of players with Australian accents playing for England, John. As an
Yeah,
ex-England
the
coach,
heritage players, though, Martin. I don't see that's an issue. Just look at the British Lions who went down under to
yeah, well,
Australia. You know, the heritage players, and if they can prove that they care and they're good enough, I don't see an issue. Victor Radley, you would say you just accept that he's going to play for England now because he's been so committed to the cause. And I think if other players are similar, so you've got to look at them because there is quality there. And again, I'll go back just as we've talked about Ivan Cleary. If they win the grand final, everybody will forget about that. If Sean Wayne wins the Ashes series, they won't question who's been playing. They'll just
no,
say England's beat Australia in the Ashes for the first time in God knows how many years.
yeah. Yes, absolutely. Well, interestingly, after the St Helens game last weekend, Brian Carney and his team interviewed Jack Welsby, and they actually raised that issue about, players based in Australia playing for England on a heritage qualification. And they asked him what he thought about it, and he said, "Well, you sort of scratch your head a bit at first, but when you meet them, when
Yep.
when Victor Radley joined the squad and talked about his family background in England, then it became very clear why he wanted to play for England.
Yeah.
And, the same thing would no doubt be true of some of the other players who fall into that category, I think.
Martin, they're not breaking any rules.
No,
You
no.
know, if they're putting their hands up to play and they qualify, it's then up to Sean and his coaching staff to see whether they would improve that playing group.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting, actually. I was actually eating out at an Asian restaurant last night, and the waiter, who was a lovely guy, was a young man who, had come over 8 years ago from Afghanistan, oddly enough. And he was saying that his brother is such a good cricketer that he's on Yorkshire's books now. He's young. I think he's 18 years old, playing professional cricket for Yorkshire, just coming through the ranks. And I said, who would your brother rather play for, Afghanistan or England at cricket? And he said, well, in our case, it would be England because Afghanistan we actually ran away from.
Yeah.
So but there is that more and more people. The point I'm making is that more and more people, because of movements around the world and migration here, there, and everywhere, more and more people qualify for more than one national team. And there are some people who, I mean, in Australia, there are some players who qualify for Australia, New Zealand, Samoa,
Yeah.
and maybe
Yeah.
even Tonga. So, who do they choose?
But also, I think a valid point is the fact that the international game in the Southern Hemisphere is really on the rise simply because the South Sea Island nations are so good now. And they make it a true competition when they play those Pacific Championships. So what's wrong with that? I think that's good.
It's
That
marvellous,
bodes
isn't it?
well for us as a game.
The Pacific Cup is a really terrific tournament
It
to
is.
watch, to be
It
honest.
is. Yeah.
That opening game, New Zealand v Samoa in Auckland, is going to be
Yeah.
terrific, to be
It
honest.
will. It will.
Absolutely. All right, fellas, we've been going for just over an hour or so now. Anything else you want to touch on, Martin, before we wrap things up today, mate?
No, I don't think so. Just looking forward to a great weekend of action, Jake. I think the big games in Super League this weekend are Hull v St Helens on Friday. That's going to be a good one. Hull KR v St Helens on Friday, rather. And Hull versus Leeds on Saturday. Two big games in Hull this weekend. If you want to be anywhere as a rugby league fan this weekend, be in Hull, mate, because you can go and see two terrific matches and with both with pretty uncertain outcomes, I would say.
Yeah.
If you both had to have your pick in those matches, Hull KR versus Saints, who would you pick in that one, fellas?
Well, I think Hull KR will have to bounce back, and if they don't, I think they could be in trouble. So I think under Willie Peters they will bounce back. I think they'll beat St Helens on Friday, not easily though. Gosh, it's going to be a great game. And on Sunday, on Saturday rather, Hull v Leeds. I can only see Leeds winning that one, given their current form. I think that John's mentioned that it's a battle between Wakefield and Hull, and he favours Wakefield to get into the top six. And I think we might see that, this weekend, because Wakefield play Huddersfield at home on Saturday, and I would think they'd win that game. But Hull, I can't see them beating Leeds. John, what do you think?
I'm going to go for St Helens to win and for Leeds to win, so they won't like me in Hull
No,
this weekend.
you're persona non grata there, mate. Now,
yeah, but I think it'll be 2 away victories. So,
what do you think Saints will beat Hull KR?
I do, yes, I do. I think Hull KR. I think they've been so consistent and so great and performed at such a high level throughout the season. I think that you've got to have a wobble at some stage, and I think they're experiencing it now. But I may well be proved wrong, and I'm sure Willie Peters would be delighted to prove me wrong. But I'm going for 2 away wins.
Right, that's really fascinating. Yeah.
So public enemy number 1 in Hull this weekend, mate.
Yeah.
And just
I've got some points on the board though in Hull, don't worry, Jake. So
just in the Championship, John, you're playing London on Saturday. That's going to be an interesting game, isn't it? And you might learn a bit more about London's prospects after that game. I think that's a really interesting match, actually. And,
it is.
London will come and give you a big challenge, I think.
They will. They're a really good. They're a high energy team, and they're very well coached. And the personnel's improved as the season's gone along. So we'll have to see what's what. But we had a good win last week, and the players enjoyed winning. That they'd forgotten what it was like to win, but they enjoyed winning. So if they can draw on that feeling, we'll challenge them. Believe you me.
And the other crucial games in the Championship, you've already said that you think Bradford will beat Toulouse on Friday on Saturday night. We've also got on Sunday Barrow v Halifax. That's a crucial game for two sides in the low reaches of the playoff positions, both battling to get into the top six. Do you think Barrow will hold off Halifax's challenge?
With it being up in Cumbria, yes.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, they're like a different team. Barrow at home are a different team to Barrow away from home.
They seem to be, don't they?
Yes, I think Barrow will beat Halifax there. I think it'll be close, but I just think they'll come home.
Have you been impressed by Carl Eastman's first year as a coach?
Yes, I have. Yes, I think the people that he had there, they were very similar to the playing roster from the year before when they had a disappointing year. Well, they've had a good year this year. So yeah, I think he's really in his maiden debut year. I think he's made a very good impression.
Yeah, and the other crucial game in the Championship this weekend is Oldham v Doncaster. Doncaster probably need to win that game to sustain a challenge for the top six, but it's a tough one for them. They've had 3 losses in a row, haven't they? They've fallen out of the top six now. It's funny, even in the Championship, you do have these wobbles, as you've said, and they've just had one. They need to bounce back pretty urgently, don't they?
They do, but Oldham, as I said before, they've recruited from Super League.
They're a lot stronger now than they were at the start.
They'll be bedding in now as well and getting used to what Sean Long wants and getting used to the environment. So again, I think Oldham will bring the bacon home there as well. I think they'll win that game.
Absolutely. Okay, mate.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, John. All the best for the rest of the season, mate. Enjoy coaching these last few matches as we head towards the end of the season, and who knows, we might even see you back on a coaching gig if you enjoy it so much, mate.
Never say never, but I'm looking forward to the Ashes, I'll tell you. I just can't wait for them. I'm like a kid at Christmas waiting for that them October and November dates.
Yes, it's the only good thing about the approach of winter, isn't it, in a way?
Yes.
That we know we're going to see some great rugby.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Absolutely.
And you never know, Jake, we might win this time.
Oh.
I'm not going to lie, mate. I'm a little bit nervous.
Good.
There's been a little bit of drama. Like, we've lost Payne Haas. There's a few other players who are, talking about defecting. So, yes, I think if you guys are going to win, this is the year to do it.
It is. So let's build on those nerves.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. But mate, I'm sure we'll. I mean, who knows? We'll probably have you back on at some stage leading up to the Ashes. Mate, it'd be good to get your take, especially when those squads are finalised. And don't forget, to our listeners, if you do want to read the article that about John in this month's edition of Rugby League World Magazine, head along to tovarl.com/shop. Heaps of other great articles in there as well, Martyn.
Yeah.
And yeah, mate, we'll wrap it
And
up here
League
and do it
Express
again
is
next
pretty
week.
good as well, Jake. So,
Can't forget
okay,
Leeds
mate.
Express. All right, thanks again, John. Really appreciate your time, mate.
Cheers. Thank you.